Hey, this is Tommy John, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
You can put it on the board. Yes!
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Angus and Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, and of course the king of all those massive tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes. Best I've ever seen, best I've ever had. Probably be the best you ever have as well. Check them out at uppercutchops.com. That's uppercutchops.com. Or give them a call, find out what's for dinner. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100 for uppercutchops.com. Yes! Man, that's good stuff. Highly encourage you to check that out, folks. Boy, Uppercut Chops. I've got a freezer full of those incredible Prime Angus and Wagyu steaks and chops. I mean, shoot, even those short rib of beef, boy, those are incredible. The ground beef, the giant burgers, it is absolutely incredible. Again, it's just something that we like to talk about here. We like food, and of course, everybody on Chicago Food Favorites, everybody participating there on that Facebook group, thanks for joining us, as well as everybody driving up and down Interstate 15 on, well, actually listening to The Drive, 101.5 FM and 107.3 FM on Highway Country Radio. Thanks for joining us. Also, WDGY 99.1 FM in Atlanta. Thanks for waking up with us, as well as everybody driving home with us in Auburn, Alabama, on WAUD 1230 on the AM dial. That's home of the Atlanta Braves, plus all the others. Thanks for everybody joining us. By the way, folks, teamed up with Vacation Buddies on this one, and we've got a very simple trivia question for you. If you like to do a little traveling, well, guess what? We could probably help you out. How about this? 2 nights in Las Vegas, 2 nights in Branson, Missouri, or 2 nights in Orlando, Florida. If you can answer this trivia question, how many World Series championships have the New York Yankees won? Is it A, 1, B, 3, C, 5, or D, 27? How many World Series championships have the Yankees won? The New York Yankees won. A, 1, B, 3, C, 5, or D, 27. If you know the answer, call 888-576-5777. That's 888-576-5777. 888-576-5777. Give them a call right now if you know the answer. Hey, if you're driving out to Las Vegas right now from the greater Los Angeles market, well, guess what? You may be in for a couple of nights over in fabulous Las Vegas, right here in Vegas, or in any of the other destinations that were mentioned. Again, Vacation Buddies is not affiliated with this station, so just make sure you remember that, folks, and give them a call at 888-576-5777. All right. So, as we think about steroids and performance-enhancing drugs and all these other things, we see that there's a lot wrong with sports. And actually, that's kind of the theme of our show today. And we have to start out with the idea that, look, performance-enhancing drugs, they do different things to different people. People say, well, Barry Bonds juiced and all this other stuff. I don't know about that. I wasn't there. There's reports of it, whatever. But I will tell you, as a former baseball player, hitters have a definite advantage taking these muscle-stimulating drugs, so to say, or whatever they want to call them. So these, we'll just call them performance-enhancing drugs. We'll just leave it at PEDs. Well, the reality is, in the grand scheme of things, a batter will react differently. They have different benefits than other position players. And a batter, obviously, they're bigger, stronger, they hit the ball further. Real simple. Now, a pitcher, I can tell you this much. I don't necessarily believe that a pitcher is going to benefit from performance-enhancing drugs, because what is the performance enhancement? You have to ask yourself, what is the pitcher getting out of it? Well, first of all, even if you make the pitcher's arms stronger by chance, you're not really going to increase his ability to throw the ball harder. It just doesn't work that way, folks. And so for the years that I used to play baseball, and I was a former pitcher, as I look at it, I say, well, how in the world is a pitcher really benefiting from it? Well, the only way that I know of, I mean, somebody please correct me if I'm wrong, info@thesportscircus.com. If you know a different way that they can benefit besides longevity on the field, I would love to know. Again, info@thesportscircus.com. What I don't understand is how people think that a pitcher will get a tighter spin on the ball by taking performance-enhancing drugs. How a pitcher will throw the ball harder when there's only so hard that you can actually throw the ball in the first place. And so I guess it really comes down to, is the angle of the arm going to be better? Is the spin rate going to be better? Is the velocity going to be better? Chances are the answer is a big, fat no on every one of those. So that leads us to Jose Alvarado, recently picking up a suspension because of performance-enhancing drugs. That's right. So, of course, the Phillies, they'll be without their best reliever all year, and honestly, throughout the playoffs as well. So this particular lefty had been suspended for 80 games after he failed a performance-enhancing drug test. And, of course, Major League Baseball's statement on it says that he tested positive for exogenous testosterone. Okay, so he's taking some kind of a testosterone. It's likely to stimulate his muscles, but it doesn't make him throw the ball harder or allow him to spin the ball faster and whip it out of his wrist any faster. Anyway, look, the guy's he's about 30. Now, at that age, when you turn 30 in the professional sports world, or just in the sports world generally, let's just stick to pro sports. What happens is the body tends to break down and get injured a little bit more frequently than previous. And that's just something that, look, I don't have any hard data on it. I'm sure you can dig hard and dig high and dig low, and you'll find all kinds of data showing players get injured. I have to do a show on that, in fact. Players get injured more frequently by the age of, or after the age of 30 than they do prior to. So if that is the case, my curiosity is, what is the real benefit? Nonetheless, Major League Baseball says, hey, look, man, you tested positive for exogenous testosterone, so we're going to go ahead and lock you up for the rest of the year. You're not going to play playoff baseball, and I'm sorry, we can't help you. And so he had a pretty good ERA, 2.7, and strikeouts to walk was really good, 6.25. So that's really good stuff. Bunch of saves, including this one, that one, the other one, against some division rivals and so forth, and some non-division games. But look, in his entire career, he's really had a pretty good ERA. He's been pretty good. But the knock against Alvarado, from what I remember, is this guy has had issues with blown saves and pressure situations. So you say, well, wait a minute, you just said that he had a pretty good ERA and all this other stuff. Yeah, he did. But sometimes when pitchers get into real pressure situations, they may not perform as well. And so that's just what happens. Like, it's kind of like some people are good test takers and some people aren't. But you know the content, you know the material, you just have a hard time regurgitating the material. And so sometimes it's that way. Well, when you go out there for a relief stint, which I've seen this movie myself, sometimes just mentally you're not ready for it. And it's almost like you got to bring a lunch pail and a hard hat to work, basically getting out there to get the last couple of outs or last few outs or whatever the heck it is, right? Back in my day, it was basically an inning or two of relief work. And so sometimes the difficult situations will get to you. Well, in this particular case, Alvarado is a pretty good player, but he seemed to have trouble with runners in certain positions on base. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to libel him or slander him, I should say. I'm not going to say anything that I shouldn't. But I will say that sometimes other pitchers perform a little bit better. But you ask yourself, well, why are they in the closer role? And what is the deal with this closer role in the first place? I mean, me, personally, I have a problem with the closer role. And the reason I have a problem with it is because, as I see it, it is a demonstration of how weak the starting pitching is in the first place. And so back in the day, in the Wayback Time Machine, pitchers were pitchers. You had starting pitchers, and that's it. And the ones that couldn't really get it done in the starting rotation, they would be sent to long relief or they'd be sent to short relief. And most of the time, pitchers back in the day, we'll just say 30, 40 years ago, those pitchers would last no less than 6-7 innings. And they would go 7-8 innings, and you see a lot of complete games. But the game has changed and all this analytical nonsense. And they have said, well, we want a pitcher to go 5 1/3 or 5 2/3, and then we want a setup guy, or then we want a middle relief guy, then we have a setup guy, then we have a closer. And so you're burning through arms left, right, and center in baseball. In fact, when we come back from break, we're going to take this to, I'm not going to say to the next level. I hate when people say that, but we're just going to take it a little bit further, break it down just a touch, and then we're going to give you a little bit more feedback on Alvarado, the Philadelphia Phillies, and what their options are. Back here in a few minutes on The Circus. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come, folks. I'm your ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
If you'd like to borrow up to $100,000 and get pre-approved in minutes, call the number we'll give you at the end of this commercial. Our lending partners have already loaned millions of dollars to individuals just like you, and we're ready to lend you up to $100,000 if you qualify. Even if your credit is not perfect, you could use the money to pay off high-interest credit cards, for home renovations, or consolidate existing debt. You can get flexible, easy-to-pay terms. The consultation to find out if you qualify is free. To find out if you qualify for our special financing program, call this toll-free number 24 hours a day. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. That's 800-335-1376. Important terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Loan amount, annual percentage rate, and term will vary depending on creditworthiness. Applying does not guarantee approval. Account approval is subject to verification and confirmation of your credit history and acceptance by a lender. If you choose to apply for a loan through us, a consumer report will be obtained to evaluate your creditworthiness in connection with your application for credit.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UpperCutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UpperCutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UpperCutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UpperCutChops.com or call 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Or make your selection directly at UpperCutChops.com.
back to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Thank you, Roy, and welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Check them out at csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. That's the College of Southern Nevada Athletics, csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. Check them out, folks. All right, welcome back to everybody, Radio TV. And by the way, for everybody driving right up here to Las Vegas from Los Angeles, or maybe, hell, you're on your way back to L.A., from Las Vegas, and you said, gee, I wish I would have had a couple of nights for free in Vegas. Well, guess what? You may be able to pick that up real soon if you call 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777, and you answer a simple trivia question. Right here, if you have the answer to it, you could pick up a couple of nights in Vegas, or a couple of nights in Branson, Missouri, or a couple of nights in Orlando, Florida. And the trivia question in the first segment is the same one right here. How many World Series championships did the New York Yankees win? How many have they won? Is it A, 1, B, 3, C, 5, or D, 27? If you know the answer, call 888-576-5777, 888-576-5777. Again, 888-576-5777. Go ahead, give them a call. If you have the answer, couple of free nights in your future right there with our friends over at Vacation Buddies. By the way, they are not affiliated with this radio station. 888-576-5777. All right. Moving on, back to Jose Alvarado and the suspension, a left-handed pitcher with a performance-enhancing drugs suspension. Now, I had mentioned, as a former pitcher myself, I don't see how the PEDs will help a pitcher throw the ball harder, spin the ball faster, or anything like that. If anything, the only thing that I can imagine it does is it will keep you on the field longer. That's it. Meaning, if you're injured, it will mask an injury. But it's not going to make you go from 95 to 97 or 97 to 99. It just doesn't do that. That's not how it works. Whereas a hitter, obviously they can hit the ball a lot harder, a lot further, etc. So anyway, the reality is Alvarado is a decent reliever, and this guy is, well, he's going to be on the shelf. And so you have to ask yourself, what are the Phillies going to do now? Look, the Phillies have some options. There are some guys out there that are available. And I think arguably one of the better choices, there's a guy by the name of Ryan Helsley, who's a right-handed reliever, and he's with the St. Louis Cardinals. This guy has an established good reputation, and he has established himself as one of baseball's top relievers over the last few years, even picking up some Cy Young votes in the last few years. And this guy, will he be available? Who the heck knows? But I guess for the right price, everybody's available. How about Pete Fairbanks from the Tampa Bay Rays? And, the Rays are one of those teams that, I don't care what it is, they always seem to produce good pitchers. I don't know what it is. And boy, that's a team, and that system, I would have loved to play for that organization back in the day, but because they just know how to develop their players. But anyway, this guy has a club option for next season, and that's technically going to double his salary if it exercised. So I don't really know if the Rays want to pay that kind of money. And so the Rays probably, because they're just chock full of good pitchers and just good players, man, they really, really develop their players right. So I guess for as good as he's been, I don't know. I mean, he seems to be one of those guys. But again, that's another righty, right? And another righty that's out there is the long-traveled, well-established Kenley Jansen. Now, you may remember him with the LA Dodgers, and then, of course, he went over to the Boston Red Sox and with the Angels, and he may be available again. As a matter of fact, he is, I don't know, I mean, look, the guy just seems to be timeless, and he doesn't bedazzle people at this point, but what he does is he gets people out. And he's one of those late inning experience guys that knows how to get those real tough outs. And so I wasn't a believer when I first saw him, but over time, I mean, he has really proven his worth out there. And that's the reason you take a guy like him, because let's say the Phillies have a problem with their bullpen, and it seems like every year they have a problem with their bullpen. Well, some of their starting pitching is not performing so well, but generally speaking, their bullpen has been their Achilles heel. And so you ask yourself, well, how do you get past the Achilles heel? Funny, I watched the movie Troy last night, thinking of Achilles. Boy, what a great movie that is. And if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but Achilles was played by Brad Pitt, arguably one of his best roles that he's ever played, but one of those classic movies. I think it's been out for 15, 18 years, whatever the hell it is. But man, it's just a really good movie if you know about the old Greeks and Romans and stuff like that. That's one of those ones you absolutely have to see. But anyway, back to Jansen's. Look, the Angels, they really don't have a reason to hang on to this guy. And the bigger question is, what about the money that's owed to him? That's going to be the big issue. You know, the Angels have another guy, which this one really is a real head scratcher, because I think of Reed Detmers as a very, very good left-handed starting pitcher. This guy is good. It's just that he's in the wrong system. And you can't necessarily blame Perry Manassian. You've got to go back to Artie Moreno. In my opinion, Artie Moreno is one of the worst owners in Major League Baseball. And he really holds, in my opinion, his general manager to the fire. He puts his feet to the fire and says, oh, by the way, I'm not going to give any money to spend on these players. So they're stuck taking a bunch of rejects from other teams, generally speaking. But Reed Detmers is one of their pieces. And it's tragic to imagine that this guy is going to end up with his career being flushed down the toilet, just like a guy by the name of Mike Trout. Mike Trout seems to have his career essentially flushed down the toilet by playing in Anaheim. I mean, who the hell wants to play in Anaheim? And you're second fiddle to the Dodgers perpetually. And unfortunately, Reed Detmers is following a very similar path. But they say, well, you know, he struggled the last couple of seasons, above average stuff. And he's a very intriguing buy low candidate for other teams. But the Angels weren't willing to give up on him, and that's a good thing. So they know. But the question is, look, he's had some struggles, but does he have a good pitching coach? That's a whole nother discussion. Who's the bullpen coach? And who is the catcher's coach? Who is the catcher's coach that is keeping those catchers making mechanical mistakes in front of the pitchers? Now, I see this on a regular basis. Nobody talks about this. And when it comes to baseball, folks, I really know this stuff. And you ask yourself, well, why are the catcher's mistakes important to the pitcher? It could be something as simple as a framing issue for framing pitches. It could be something as simple as holding a target up for the pitcher. It could be as simple as bad mechanics for the catchers when they're on one knee and then they're on one foot. And it's bad business, bad mechanics for the catchers in general. It's really bad. And so Reed Detmers, I believe, is a victim to all of those, plus a hell of a lot more. I like Reed Detmers, and I think that'd be a huge pickup for the Phillies if they ever did. Or frankly, I would love if my beloved White Sox would take him. Why not? I mean, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, of Orange County, the Orange Curtain of Interstate 5 of Earth seem to have 3 or 4 or 5 former Chicago White Sox players on their team, so why not give one back? Now, that would be a pretty good idea, in my opinion. Anyway, moving on. So Kyle Finnegan is another interesting option because Kyle plays for a pretty, well, let's put it this way. I was going to say a bad team, but they're not that bad. But Kyle plays for a team that seems to have been rebuilding ever since they got rid of Juan Soto, and that's the Washington Nationals. And Kyle is a pretty good closer, yet another righty. And when we think of the righties, we say, well, geez, how many righties do we have to have? Well, we don't need that many. What we really need are lefties. And so Kyle, yet another righty, and I don't know. I mean, he's had a decent year, whatever, and last summer, All-Star game, etc. But he was non-tendered by the Nats to begin the offseason last year. And so you ask yourself, what the hell were they thinking? Are they thinking we're going to have to pay him too much money? And the Washington bullpen has done pretty well outside of its competitive picture when you think of that. But Kyle Finnegan is a real option, but the problem is that is a division team. And so Washington's going to have a big haul that they're going to want back. How about Seranthony Dominguez from the Orioles? And Dominguez is a former Philly, but do you want a guy that you've already moved on from? I don't know. The Orioles are not really that good in the grand scheme of things. But do you want a guy that's already been there and done that? It's like, oh, God, not that guy again. Let's move on from him. How about Jake Bird from the Rockies? The Rockies are the worst team in baseball, and a lot of front offices would take a real hard look at Bird in the midst of a career season. So this guy's got a pretty good slider. And the problem is with the slider pitchers that they end up with the Tommy John thing because of the tweaking of the elbow. So is he a good option? Is he going to go from essentially just about one of those worst to first kind of setups? Is that going to motivate him? Sure, it's going to motivate him. But as bad as it's been for the Rockies this season, this guy actually has been one of the bright spots. There's only a couple of players on the Rocks that are good. And I think that Doyle, their center fielder, is going to move on. And there's no question he's going to move on. And I think you also have a third baseman over there that will likely move on as well. Other than that, those guys are in trouble. How about David Bednar? Boy, you don't even know what to think of this guy because he's either really hot or, man, he is off. And the Pirates are in last place. And so it doesn't make sense for David Bednar to stick around there when the Pirates can get a lot from their cross-state rival, being the Philadelphia Phillies. They're in different divisions anyway. So that one seems to make a lot of sense. And the bigger question is, are they really seeking a righty or do they want another lefty? I think they're going to probably want a lefty, in my opinion. When we come back, we're going to finish up with these different options, pick up right back with David Bednar. And right back here on the Sports Circus in just a few minutes, folks. Hopefully you're enjoying this one. We're going to get into some controversy in the next segment just because we can. Back here in a few minutes, folks. Don't go anywhere. I'm your ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime, nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it on here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Hello Americans, it's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time, that's 800-950-2049.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP television. Folks, make sure you check out thesportscircus.com for our upcoming guest, our prior guest, recorded shows, which can be found on all streaming platforms, including Apple, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, iHeart, Stitcher, Deezer, and a whole bunch of others. Also, make sure you check out the sportscircus.com's partners page. Lots of great partners on there. And one of our favorites, of course, is Al's Number One Italian Beef at 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. That's Al's Number One Italian Beef, 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. If you can't get over there for some great food, check them out at alsbeef.com. That's alsbeef.com. And you can learn about the famous Italian beef sandwich and its history, because they are the creators, his family, their family. Since 1938, they've been in business. They invented the Italian beef sandwich about 117 years ago in the great city of Chicago. Folks, I gotta tell you, you may think about beef sandwich, French dip. Well, that's a really good one. You may think of that awful Philly cheesesteak sandwich. Well, good luck with that one, if you know what I mean. That one. I guess is great for a stomachache, but that's about it. But anyway, check them out. alsbeef.com, folks. That's alsbeef.com. All right, welcome back, everybody. You know you are. TV, radio, streaming, etc. All right, back to the Phillies conundrum with their pitcher that has the performance-enhancing drug issue. Apparently, lost 80 games in a suspension. I mean, what is it with players that when things go bad, right? Because that's going to be an ongoing theme here for the rest of this program. And okay, fine. So again, what could Philadelphia do? They could maybe replace with David Bednar or Mason Miller from the Athletics and a host of other players. It doesn't really matter at this case. The reality is, when things go bad, when I guess you ask, why is it that players are injured so frequently in the first place? In my opinion, and from what I've seen, it is a strength and conditioning issue. First of all, baseball players, they're supposed to have long, lean muscles. They're not supposed to be big and bulky. They're supposed to have long, lean muscles, and those athletes with those muscles tend to be injured less frequently. And so you ask yourself, well, what about football players? Well, again, you've got a strength and conditioning issue. And football players back in the day were not as big as they are today. It's bulk, bulk, bulk. Okay, fine. But ultimately, you're going to have to do what? You're going to have to run with all those pads on. You're going to have to be able to have some good agility. And all of that stuff kind of goes away when you're big and bulky. And so there is a problem. I mean, even a lot of basketball players, they have had the same problem. Well, let's go get big and bulky. They found that they were not as quick. They were not as agile. They could not move laterally as fast as they could before. So it goes back to conditioning. And hockey players are the absolute epitome of that, because easily the toughest sport to play is hockey. And having giant, bulky muscles makes no sense when you've got to skate at 20 plus miles an hour. And yeah, you've got guys that are literally trying to check you into the fifth or sixth row through the glass. And so you've got to be quick. You've got to have some agility and all these other wonderful things. But hockey players, you need to be strong. You need to be strong in your legs. A lot of it, folks, is a strong lower body, right? So you've got to have good footwork, and you've got to have the real strong legs. The legs can be a little bit bulky. That's fine. But generally speaking, what you don't want are these gigantic thunderous thighs that won't even allow you to run. And really, when you think about athletes, you have to think in these manners. And you say, well, all right, outside of strength and conditioning, what is the real problem with sports? What is the problem? I mean, what is the problem with even the WNBA? And this is not even a strength and conditioning thing. It's nothing like that. How about this one? This is according to CBS Sports. The WNBA is investigating alleged, quote, hateful, close quote, comments from fans during a game. All right. Where does this end here, folks? And of course, the WNBA announced that it has opened an investigation into an alleged hateful comment made by fans at a particular stadium during the Indiana and Chicago game. So be it. And they say, quote, The WNBA strongly condemns racism, hate, and discrimination in all forms, and they have no place in our league or in society. We are aware of the allegations and looking into the matter. We are aware of the allegations of inappropriate fans' conduct, and we are working closely with the WNBA to complete their investigation. Look, I get all that. I got all that. But what I'm wondering is the only thing that we have for women's sports is the WNBA that is in a professional league besides soccer. And the soccer doesn't seem to have the drama, but I tell you, the basketball sure seems to have a lot of drama. And it's a little bit disheartening after a while. It's like, come on. What is it with this? They're trying to make this Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese thing. They're trying to make it like a Larry Bird and a Magic Johnson thing. They're trying to make it as one of those kind of things. It's just not that way. Look, women's basketball, although some people like it, many people don't like it. And it's because there is drama and drama and drama and drama. It gets to the point you're like, all right, enough of this. I'd rather even watch the NBA, which I don't even watch because of all the crap that they pulled with their kneeling garbage from a few years back and all this other thing. Disrespecting the flag, and it's just not a good situation. But you ask, what is wrong with sports? I'll tell you what's wrong with it. Politics is what's wrong with it. There's too much politics in sports, and there's supposed to be a separation, kind of like church and like politics and government, politics, religion, whatever. You don't have those kinds of issues, generally speaking, in sports. You're not supposed to. So what happens in this case? Well, when you get a mix of the media, the blue media gets in the way of progress for sports. It gets in the way of commingling politics and religion. And there are things that you just don't talk about in a conversation because people don't want to hear it. Well, now what they've done for women's sports, first of all, it's a gender thing. Now it's what group you identify with, this color or that color. It's this group, whether you're an LGBTQ, whatever the alphabet letters are that go with the rest of that. I don't even know. And so there's a problem ongoing with all of this. And you say, well, all right, so there's this big hate thing going on in the WNBA. But you ask yourself further, why are women's sports receiving significantly less media coverage and overall attention than men's sports? And they're just less popular. And you could say, well, there's unequal media coverage. There's a historical bias. Well, and the historical bias side, it just wasn't there. So you can't say historical bias. I mean, the league is there. The league is there. Unequal media coverage? Yeah, but remember, for example, in the NBA, you get media coverage. In the WNBA, most of those teams are owned by what? NBA teams in the first place, right? So as I seem to recall, the LA teams are owned by the same ownership group, right? And then there's also the perception, allegedly, of lower skills and competition. I don't really think that's it, but who's perceiving that? I guess the cavemen out there are. Maybe that's the case. If you look at women's basketball is a very sound and fundamental game. You don't have guys or women slam dunking the ball. In the NBA, you really have 3-point shots and slam dunks. There's very little mid-range game left, very few floaters out there. You don't get a lot of that kind of play these days. And so the women actually have really good skills, and I think a lot of viewers, they tune out the women's game because there's no real slam dunks. They want to see slam dunk. They want to see that kind of thing. So maybe that's an issue. And also it could be a lack of role models and visibility. So the visibility goes back to media coverage. So fewer opportunities, less visibility for female athletes means that young girls may not have enough female role models to pursue them in the sporting world because traditionally they've been, think about it, from ice skating to ice hockey, women's hockey to softball. Softball is great. It's one of the greatest things you could watch at a stadium, folks. Women's softball is, in my opinion, the best of the best. Well, strike that. Only behind hockey, because hockey is the best thing to watch, in my opinion. But I'll tell you what, women's softball is a lot of fun. Well, they say, well, we don't really have the funds. There are financial disparities. And, well, as they pick up more and more, I guess, visibility, well, you're going to get a little bit more money because the sponsors and stuff. Then there's the alleged social stigma. Well, female athletes, may experience bullying, discrimination, and negative stereotypes based on their gender, sexual orientation, perceived identity, etc., and so forth. I don't know about that. I think the liberal media makes a big deal out of that, but then again, let's focus on what really matters. Well, I'll tell you what matters. Physical strength. Men are 40% stronger, and when men try to compete in women's sports, there's a real problem. I have no problem with women competing in men's sports if they want to and if they're good enough, but men certainly should not compete in women's sports. Real simple. And then there could be the proverbial lack of fan engagement, and that is a real issue. And then corporate sponsorships, which is driven by what? By media, which is driven by an excitement of the game, etc., and so forth. So you see, it's almost a circular argument, but you ask why women's sports are so unpopular. There are other issues with it as well. And I think some of it deals with the gambling aspect. Back here in a few minutes to finish up on the Sports Circus in just a few moments.
Do you know someone with a drug or alcohol problem? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything. Stop the drug and alcohol nightmare. Are drug and alcohol problems hitting you too close to home? Get help right now. Insurance may cover everything.
800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. 800-831-1560. That's 800-831-1560.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.
If you served in the Marine Corps, by now you know about the contaminated water problem at Camp Lejeune. If you were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987, you probably have a lot of questions. We have some answers. You could be entitled to compensation. Billions of dollars are being allocated to pay for damages to anyone stationed at Camp Lejeune during that time. Unfortunately, it appears that officials may have known the contaminated water problem existed and did little to protect their men. The Semper Fi code was not honored. If you or someone in your family has developed a serious illness, including various forms of cancer, call this Camp Lejeune legal support line right now. You can't turn back the clock and change what happened, but you can certainly call right now and learn your rights as a Marine. Here's the number.
Call 800-335-7196. 800-335-7196. That's 800-335-7196.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio. AAMP Television. Again, folks, check out thesportscircus.com for upcoming guests, our prior guests, and our recorded shows, which can be found on all streaming platforms. Also, check out the store tab right across the top of the page. Lots of great American-made items with our logo embroidered and or silk screened, and that would be, of course, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, sweatpants, pillows, travel mugs, mouse pads, coats, you name it, they're all there. T-shirts even, I suppose. All kinds of great items at thesportscircus.com store. A shameless plug, of course, for the Sports Circus. All right, welcome back, everybody. TV, radio. Big hello to our friends driving up and down Interstate 15 on their way to or from Las Vegas, listening in on Highway Country Radio. That's Highway Country Radio, and of course, everybody else over in Honolulu. Thanks for joining us on CBS Sports 1500 KHKA. That's home of the 49ers, Yankees, and Alabama Crimson Tide. Plus everybody else in Auburn, Alabama, WAUD, 1230 on the AM dial, War Eagle, and WDJY, 99.1 FM in Atlanta, plus all of our other affiliates, both network and independent. Thanks again on Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. Check that out, folks. Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. All right, moving on. You ask yourself, what is the deal with this content for today's show? Why is it what's wrong with sports? I'll tell you why what's wrong. Because when we look at the games, they're not really as exciting as they were before. The reason being is because either A, the pitching has changed, the rules have changed in baseball, the rules have changed in football, the rules have changed in hockey and so forth. They've changed these sports because of time, because of money, because of this, because of that. And then, of course, my favorite one, is the disastrous effect of sports betting. Now, look, I am also known as Sal the Bookmaker, and I'm pretty good at prognosticating as well. I've been doing it for a very long time. And look, I have an opposing side to this first, and this is from the Washington Examiner. Now, they say the rapid legalization and spread of on-demand online sports betting have been damaging for athletes, fans, and anyone caught up in the craze that's fueling a multi-billion-dollar industry. And having sports gambling readily available on smartphones, easily connected to people's bank accounts, has made it far easier than ever for bettors to fall into addiction. Of course, Southern Methodist University, that's out of the Dallas area, examined 700,000 sports gamblers and found that less than 5% of them withdrew more money from their betting apps than they deposited into them. That's 5% won more than $100 million, which was covered by bets placed by 80% of the bettors in the first place. And the bottom 3% of bettors lost enough money to make up half of the net revenue of their betting apps in the first place. I mean, this is really bad. Just trying to mention this. They say, betting apps that have large groups of losers and they're skilled gamblers in the top 5% of the game are making their app actively, and they basically make their app appear as if they are degenerate gamblers in the first place, and really enacting their accounts to higher gambling limits. So, all right, well, you're already losing, go ahead and chase more money into it. That's like on the poker table. That's when they say you're on tilt. That means when you just keep betting and betting and betting, doesn't matter what the outcome is at that point. Then they say, well, some people, they win too much, and these betting apps slap your account with limits to restrict your winnings and their losses. I think what they do is some of them, they actually restrict your ability to withdraw money, and they make it very difficult to withdraw money. And that's how, as I see it, a lot of these organizations run their business. And I know people that place online bets, and they get some information from Sal the Bookmaker on this team or that team and whatnot, and they say, well, you know what? I'm betting with this online venue. And this is the reason when I'm going through the latest line on this, that, or the other, or the futures, I don't mention the online venues. I only mention those from either Caesars Palace, MGM, or BetMGM, that's the MGM Grand, and Bally's. Those are the only ones that I typically mention because of this exact problem, as I see it, with these online betting situations. And I don't know. I look at it and I scratch my head and say, well, wait, I mean, these bettors are really getting the short end of the stick. If you think you're getting a great deal, well, what is the great deal in the first place? So ask yourself, the great deal is actually not betting, but for those that actually must bet, The fun ones are to bet are the future bets because you can hedge on some of the odds for these. And let's take the NFL, for example. And you say, well, geez, what about the winner of the Super Bowl, right? So the lowest one, the lowest odds at either, let's just say, what do we have here? We've got Bally's. Bally's is here. They're the only ones that we're going to use right now because Caesars is not reporting. So let's just say we're going to use the line off of Bally's. If that's the case, we ask ourselves, what is, I mean, look, the line is not going to vary by much. What is the best case scenario? I see the lowest price on the board at plus 650 or 6.5 to 1. So what that means is technically I could bet about 6 other teams. We'll just say 6 teams at lay 100 to win 100, something like that. And I could basically break even on this if I so chose. Or what I could do, I could take actually the lowest 6. So those, according to Ballas, the Eagles are plus 650. They're at 6.5 to 1. The Buffalo Bills are 8 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. The Ravens are 7 to 1. The Chiefs are 6.5 to 1. The Detroit Lions are 9 to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the Commanders are 15 to 1. So let's just say there are 6 teams that you want to bet. Let's say one of those 6 teams are probably going to win the Super Bowl, and I would probably want to throw the Bengals in there too, but let's just leave those 6 teams just for argument's sake for this particular argument. So if you bet $100 on any of these teams to win the Super Bowl, the Eagles, the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Lions, or the Commanders, well, the only one that you're essentially going to break even on is going to be the Eagles. And why is that? Well, you're essentially going to break even on the Eagles because those guys are at 6.5 to 1. So you got to put up essentially 110 to win 100 in this particular case. Well, if that's the case, well, you've got yourself basically a break even. At 600, you're going to put up about 650, 660. All right. So worst case scenario is the Eagles repeat and you get yourself even money. But what you do with all the other ones, look, if the Bills win, you're coming out ahead by about $150. So if you bet 6 times at $100 per bet on any of these teams to win the Super Bowl. If the Bills are 8 to 1, well, that means you've got your juice money and you've got your flat bet money, and so you're about 660. So if the Bills win, you're actually $140 to the good. If the Ravens win, you're only $40 to the good. If the Chiefs win, you're a break even, just like with the Eagles. But if the Lions win the Super Bowl, now you win. They're at 9 to 1. You end up winning about $340. And if Washington wins, it looks like you end up winning about $840. So my point is, you take the lowest number on the board, which is about 6.5 to 1. Okay, so I could repeat that bet 6 times, $100, and pick essentially 6 teams. And so I want you to think about this, folks, just from a pure math standpoint. Now, the odds of the other teams below those top 6 winning, well, look, they're not that great, and now the prices are bigger, and that's part of it. That's part of the risk of gambling. But if you're into hedging your bets, say, look, I'm going to take the top 6 because I basically have a 6 to 1 shot, so to say, to win the Super Bowl with the Eagles and with the Chiefs, right? You're 2 participants in the last Super Bowl. But if any of the other 4 teams win, I'm going to make some money in this. Now, that's a pretty darn good way of approaching this. I don't know how many people do this, but as I see it, the future bets are a really good way to make money in sports betting. And so in that last article I was talking about, well, what's wrong with sports betting and everything else? And yeah, there's a lot of issues with it. It's just really that people don't have discipline for money management. This is the real problem because they say, oh, I'm going to go make a quick 100, 200, 500, 10,000, whatever the heck it is. I'm going to blow a bunch of money that I don't necessarily have, but I think this win is going to happen here, and I'm going to go ahead and bet that right away. Well, that's really not how it works. The reality is it's just like anything else. Money management rules the roost when it comes to gambling in the first place. Take it from someone who lives here in Las Vegas for many, many, many years. First moved here in 1990, so I've kind of been around for quite a bit. But you have to watch the money management. You can make money in sports betting. You just got to be smart. You can make money in machine play, but you've got to be smart. You've got to understand how the algorithms work. And the same thing goes for the probability, for example, at the 21 table, which is not really a smart bet as I see it, because the average winning hand is 19.5. The average player wins 2 out of every 7 hands. There's 16 10s in the deck for 10, Jack, Queen, King. And if you're a card counter, then you have the problem of the cut for the deck in the middle of the deck, which now you have to increase your probability, or your variance, I should say, of somebody actually being able to predict. Well, we've already seen 6 10s come out. There's 8 left. The problem is now we have a cut to deal with. Now we have to start taking half lives. And then there's a positive count, a negative count. There's all kinds of things to think about with that. Now, the best game in town to play, in my opinion, is craps. I mean, by a long shot, you could actually take the odds away from the house on a regular basis. And we're talking about performance odds. The betting odds are going to remain the same. However, you could take the performance odds away, and essentially on the table, you could make it so there's only a 15-1 shot or a 16-1 shot that could beat you. It depends on how you place your bets. For more information, info@thesportscircus.com, info@thesportscircus.com. And of course, I am known as Sal the Bookmaker on another program. In fact, we did a show called Place Your Bet for quite a while, where our winning percentage against the Vegas line was 82.4% against the line. That's right, against the line.
Show me the money!
I sure showed a lot of people the money, but remember, just from an information standpoint, that's all we're selling. We're not selling anything else. But the reality is, if you understand probability, then you'll realize how the statistics have been created in the first place. And if you're an NFL bettor game by game, man, that's tough sledding. You got to be really good. But if you bet the futures, that is where the real money can be made, because you can really hedge. And again, it may be, maybe you're a $5 bettor, maybe you're a $100 bettor, maybe you're a $1,000 bettor, maybe you're betting 10 dimes or $10,000 or beyond. That's when the real money is made. But again, you've got to be able to bankroll it, folks, because if you can't bankroll it, well, you got no business betting in the first place. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's show. I'm your ringmaster, Sal. Thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you in about 23 hours right here on your favorite station. So until then, so long, everyone.
If I was your mother and you had a drug problem, I'd grab you by the ear and make you call and get help. You can be in treatment tomorrow and start to get clean in 7 days. Follow Mom's advice and call the Detox and Treatment Helpline now. Write this number down.
800-814-8628. 800-814-8628. 800-814-8628. That's 800-814-8628.
Why pay retail for your next car? Just visit beepinautos.com to find your new-to-you car or truck. They find cars for people, even when cars are hard to find. So just go to beepinautos.com and click on Find Me a Car, and they find your perfect car on the wholesale market. Beepinautos.com. They're a car concierge. Beepinautos.com. BEEPIN autos.com. Beepinautos.com. Now you have a friend in the car business when you need it most. Trusted since 2013. Just click Find Me a Car at beepinautos.com.